So it's been 2 weeks since the GOAT retired from college football, and in that 2 weeks, a lot has transpired. We've had new coaches hired. We've had players hit the transfer portal. We've had players commit to Alabama via the transfer portal. It has been an absolute roller coaster. But today, we need to have a conversation that we probably should have had a while ago about Nick Saban's parting gift to the University of Alabama and why it could be massive for Coach Kalen DeBoer and company. Before we can, though, as always, y'all know the drill. I've got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited about Alabama's 2024 recruiting class? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And as I alluded to in the intro, and as so many of you have probably guessed already, what is Nick Saban's parting gift? Well, it was the 2024 recruiting class, a gift that Nick Saban has given the University of Alabama time and time again, which is a top-ranked recruiting class, may never have been more impactful than it is in the class of 2024. The reason why goes without saying, because the GOAT is no longer there. And if you're Kalen DeBoer, you are over the moon about the talent you have on roster, even though several guys hit the portal. Remember, even before Nick Saban retired, we were sitting right here having the conversation that, hey, there are going to be over 10 guys enter the transfer portal, so be ready for several names from the Crimson Tide to test the waters of the transfer portal. Now, no doubt, even more guys tested those waters once the GOAT retired, but nonetheless, a lot of roster turnover was expected for the Crimson Tide and for them to be able to hit that 85 scholarship number. Now, as they sit, they're at about 78, and that's before all the transfer portal additions, but nonetheless, it has never been more important, the recruiting class that Nick Saban brought in, for several different reasons. One, he's no longer there anymore. The GOAT has been able to get Alabama top 3 recruiting classes in his sleep. And though I have no doubt that once Kalen DeBoer and this staff get acclimated to SEC territory, when they start building relationships, they'll be able to recruit and recruit well. Being able to do what Nick Saban did on a year-in, year-out basis was incredible, and it was wild how much talent he was able to stack. If you're Kalen DeBoer, you had previously inherited a program that was 4-8, and you had to do an entire turnaround. Though there are areas that need addressed at Alabama, let's be 100% honest here. If you are a coach taking over after Nick Saban, you have got to be over the moon, the talent that's still on roster, plus the talent Nick Saban signed in that recruiting class that you now inherit. And whenever we talk about this 2024 recruiting class, there's no shortage of exciting players, but today we're going to focus on one area in particular, an area that I knew was important whenever they signed them, but when we fast forward to where we currently sit in Alabama's landscape, there's no understating how important it was, and that's the defensive back room. Look, Coach Sean and I talked about this one National Signing Day, or early National Signing Day, I should say, how Alabama was absolutely loading up, and it made sense. When you looked at this secondary, you had to imagine both Arnold and McKinstry were heading to the draft. That seemed like a foregone conclusion, given that they both had first-round grades. Then you had Jalen Key. It looked like he was gone. You looked at the situation and thought you had Trey Amos and Earl Little to take over for those outside corners. However, they hit the transfer portal, as does Antonio Kite. And you look up and all of a sudden, and that defensive back room, though it still has some talented pieces, specifically in the cornerback room, there was a lot left to be desired. You still have Jaleel Hurley, who's going to be a dude. You have Damani Jackson, but you needed depth. And Alabama being able to sign so many talented defensive backs couldn't have come at a better time. Let's look at what Alabama got. You have 5-star cornerback Jalen Mbakwe, 5-star cornerback Zabian Brown, 5-star safety Zay Mincy, 4-star safety Peyton Woodyard, 4-star safety Red Morgan, and 3-star safety / cornerback, depending on which service you look at, Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. Alabama needed the help in its secondary, especially when we fast forward to where we currently sit, where so many of the defensive backs hit the transfer portal. If we look at the area that was affected the most by Nick Saban's retirement, I don't think there's a question. It's the defensive back room, which makes it all the more important when Alabama was able to address needs prior to Saban having ever retired. If you're Kalen DeBoer, you need to be shaking Nick Saban's hand every day of the week and twice on Sundays for the work that he and the previous staff did putting together this defensive backs class. Because the work they did will lend itself to future success. Alabama is now in a position where, yes, they'll probably look to the transfer portal to add in some defensive back depth, some guys that have experience, because though there's a lot of talent in the defensive back room, you don't have a ton of experience. But they are in a much better position than I think a lot of people anticipated, given the 2024 recruiting class, given how much talent was signed in that class at one position in particular, being defensive back, whether we're talking cornerback or safety. It's an area that when we look at it now, all Alabama fans everywhere are so excited that Nick Saban and that previous staff was able to lock up these guys. And yes, Alabama has already lost a defensive back from the class of 2024, but when you look at the guys that have confirmed they're locked in, ready to rock and roll, you have to be over the moon. An incredibly talented bunch that could not be coming to the Crimson Tide at a better time in this transitionary period. And if you're Coach DeBoer, it allows you to hit the ground running in a manner that you have not previously been able to do. As I alluded to earlier, he inherited a Washington program that was 4-8 and instantly took them from 4-8 to 11-2. Now he's inheriting an Alabama program that was just in the college football playoffs, that had a lot of players hit the transfer portal, but still has one of the most loaded rosters in all of college football, and part of that is in thanks to what Nick Saban was able to do in the defensive back room. It's part of the reason why Alabama fans everywhere are going to be excited to see what happens this year. Even if it's questions about the secondary, they're excited to see these young guys go out there and really show what it's all about. And it really highlights the importance of getting a Damani Jackson out the transfer portal. Someone who now, when we look at it, could be a key piece for Alabama. Look, at the end of the day, freshmen playing at Alabama, that's nothing new. This has been a notion that's been out there for several years, and it's been something that other institutions use to negatively recruit against Alabama. They would tell these players, you're not going to play at Alabama as true freshmen, which to me was always one of the most wild takes in the world, because as long as these players are tuned in and watching the games, they'll know that's not true. That's the furthest thing from the truth. At Alabama, if you're a freshman, you'll play. But it's all about meritocracy. And whenever we look at this upcoming year, there's no question that the best players will play. And you better be really thankful that Nick Saban and company loaded up on a recruiting class that's now more important than ever for this new regime, for them to be able to hit the ground running, specifically at that defensive back position. Because Coach DeBoer, he is an offensive-minded guy. I've said this time and time again. I'm not worried about offensive recruiting under this new staff. Defensive recruiting is something that they're going to be working through, but I love what I've heard thus far about the staff, that they're authentic, that they're great relationship builders, and guys that have heard their pitches have said we would play for them. That to me is high praise. A Shank Taylor said that about Alabama's new defensive coordinator. That to me is high praise. But it makes it even more exciting whenever they get to hit the trail knowing Nick Saban just gave us a parting gift that there's no way we can not take advantage of. A parting gift that includes some of the most talented high school football players in all of the nation. A parting gift that's going to help us hit the ground running. And personally, I can't wait to see what that looks like, but I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.